I'm in law enforcement. Me and my partner get sent to a call for an alarm activation. No big deal, but this is not one of our usual alarms. It's a new one we've never been to before. Takes us longer than normal to find the house because it's way back off the road and no lights are on. We finally find the place, and it's super creepy. Spiders and webs everywhere. Nothing outside the house like a trash can or knickknacks. We split up, per the usual, to check the outside for open doors or windows. I go one way, he goes the other. The house is 2 stories. I get this sort of garage, carport-looking thing, along with a locked shop of some sort on the first floor. Nothing weird seen or heard. Partner is still making his way around to me from where we started. I find the stairs to the 2nd floor and head up. I wind up on a giant covered porch attached to the house. And it's huge. Literally the size of the carport below with about 4 sets of wicker outdoor furniture. I'm looking around, don't see anything super weird. Partner finally gets to me upstairs, and we talk about the weird layout for a minute. During this time, I feel slightly unsettled but am unsure why. I start looking a little closer through the sliding glass doors at the front of the house. Partner tells me everything is locked up from his side, and there's even vines growing over some windows and doors. I start noticing little things in the living room. The carpet looks like it's from 1962, no TV, no electronics in general, very 60s layout. I thought all of that was weird, but I've seen weirder on this job. I then ask dispatch what the alarm activation was. I get told attic exit. Super weird and very specific, but okay. So we start looking around best we can in the living room. No attic. Then it occurs to me, what if it's outside in this giant covered porch? I look up, sure enough, directly above me is an attic. I can even see the alarm sensor boxes on it. I look at my partner and tell him I'm not going up. He suggests we rock, paper, scissors for it. I'm an idiot and agree. I lose. So I'm going up in the attic. At this point, we've made jokes about how weird all of this is. I'm slightly unsettled but haven't said anything, and I've literally never seen an attic outside that has alarms. Also, who leaves their house looks like the 60s? I reluctantly pull my gun out and start climbing the ladder. I should mention I'm chubby. Attics and ladders aren't my friends. Stick my head up just far enough to see there are no people and not a lot of stuff up there. And it smells really weird. It smells like old people have been living up there for 20 years. Like dead old people. Not actual dead body, thankfully. But like the smell of old people has died up there. I quickly come back down with nothing but the weird smell to report. I shrug it off as we go to leave. Partner pulls up next to me, jokingly saying, "We're looking at this all the wrong way. We weren't looking for someone getting into the attic. We should have been looking for something getting out." We both laugh it off as weird call, weird job, and drive off. As we drive back to our hiding spot a mile or so away, me in front of him in separate cars, I see what looks like a person standing in the roadway out of the corner of my eye. It looked like a black female wearing dark clothing holding a light-colored bag, though I only saw the person for a split second. I'm not 100% sure of what I saw, so I wait and see if partner says anything about it. A few seconds after I pass whatever I saw, partner calls out over the radio that he and I are getting out with a person in the roadway at given intersection. I turn around with him. This all happens within probably 20 seconds. We turn around and can't find the person. Person vanished completely. We described the person to each other and both definitely saw it and saw the same thing. No idea where person saw and thing went. It was less than half a mile from Creepy House. I worked at a mental hospital that had previously been a tuberculosis sanatorium at the beginning of the 20th century. I know, that is the most cliché shit ever, but the stereotype came from somewhere. If you look at mental hospitals in Colorado, you can find it, but I'd prefer not to triangulate myself. Weird stuff happened pretty frequently at the hospital. To some extent, that's to be expected when you have patients suffering from psychosis and such, but some stories couldn't be adequately explained by that. For example, I worked with teenagers and my sister Wing worked with children. Several of my co-workers had had kids come out of a specific room in the middle of the night asking staff what they wanted. Every time, the child told them they'd been woken up by someone calling their name. It was always the same room and happened repeatedly with totally different patient cohorts, i.e., one child couldn't have simply told other kids they had had an experience in that room. The main admin building also had weird reports. Back in the day, the basement had been the morgue, and there were claims that there was an incinerator down there for bodies. A couple times, police fire had shown up saying they received a call from the building in the middle of the night. None of the staff had any idea what they were talking about. I was told it had been traced to the basement, which should have been impossible since there were no longer any working phones coming from there. Whether that part is true, I don't know. What I do know is it seemed more believable after my experience. Normally, I worked during the day, but one time I worked a double, so my shift ended at 11:30 at night. There was a TV DVD player AV cart thing that we occasionally borrowed from the admin building so we could show movies to the patients, but it had to be taken back when we were done for safety reasons. So, at about 10 that night, I started wheeling it back. Once I got to the admin building, I had to take an elevator to the upper floors to put the cart back where it belonged. It was already creepy. Most of the lights in the building were off, turned low. There were some people working since we took admits overnight, but it was still a lot more quiet than normal. The elevator itself is one of the really old-fashioned ones with a cage and everything. It's partially modernized, but a lot of it was from the original building. I got into the elevator with my cart, hit the button for the 3rd floor, and waited. However, instead of going up, the elevator went down. It stopped at the basement and let out a ding, but the doors never opened. It just sat there, with me in the cage and the doors outside closed, in the basement, in a mostly abandoned building that was reputed to be haunted. Then it just took me back up to the 3rd floor, and everything was normal. I know it doesn't sound that scary, but honestly, that 15 seconds or whatever, while I was hitting the button to go back up, seemed like they took for fucking ever. I was sure the doors were going to spring open any second and show me a corpse or something. After I got back to my building, I told my coworkers about it, and apparently, I wasn't the only one who had the elevator take them on an unexpected field trip. I never worked there at night again. I used to work at a pub that was 2 miles from my house. My shift ended at about 11 one night. I stayed there for a couple of drinks, then started walking home. Now this had been an exceptional night for me tip-wise, and I had close to $400 in cash on me at the time. Between the pub and my house was exactly one street light about a quarter mile from the pub. The rest of the walk was in complete darkness. This was a dark night too. It was close to the new moon and cloudy to boot, so it was almost pitch black. Now I live out in the boonies, so there isn't even much light pollution to help out. Not long after I leave the pub, a car slowly drives by me. About a quarter mile down the road, the car slows to a stop, and it just sits there. I stop walking and watch the car. It sits for a few minutes, then slowly drives away. A couple of minutes later, the same car comes slowly driving back by me in the opposite lane. It gets by me, drives a bit down the road, and slows to a stop again. Then it does a U-turn and starts creeping back down the road towards me with the lights off. At this point, I'm fucking terrified. I don't have a cell phone at the time. There's no one around to see what's going on. The car is between me and the pub, so I can't get back to the safety there. My house is still about 1.5 miles away. No way I can quickly escape there. I quickly run off the road into the woods and duck down behind a bush. I watch for the car, but it's too dark to see it with the lights off and bushes, trees, undergrowth between me and the road. I sit there for about 10 minutes, but don't hear anything. I'm about to make my way back to the road when I hear car doors closing. Now, I'm really panicking. It feels like my chest is about to explode. The hairs on the back of my neck is standing up. I keep imagining someone sneaking up behind me. I stay hidden and hope to God whoever it is doesn't find me. I don't know how long I stay there, but I eventually hear car doors again, then cars passing by. I give it a couple of minutes, then ease back to the road. When I see it's clear, I haul ass back to the pub and let my boss know what happened. He said then and there that I'm never to walk home at night again. Either him, his brother, or his mom will give me a lift home. When the other servers and the kitchen staff hear what happened, they all say the same thing. Never been that terrified before. Few years ago, I worked night shift at a hotel. It wasn't super fancy, but it wasn't a seedy motel or anything either, and it was in a decent area of town. It was geared for extended stay guests, who were mostly there for work. There were not a lot of late arrivals, so it was a pretty nice gig. I got paid to just kick it in the back room and browse Reddit until the sun came up, which is what I was doing with my nights anyway. After midnight, we locked the front doors. If someone sounded the buzzer, I could open the doors manually to let them in. One night, at about 1 a.m, a young woman ran up and began pounding on the front doors. She was screaming at the top of her lungs. "Please help me! Open the fucking doors! Please don't let them get me!" Shit like that. So I opened the doors for her and grabbed the phone and punched in 911. She sprinted in, and I just watched the doors close behind her. Agonizingly slow, positive that her attackers would slip in before the automatic doors closed and locked again. But no one came. She kept babbling, telling me to call the police. "Call the police. Please, you can't let them get me." She kept saying them, which freaked me out more than anything. I was already calling the police, of course, and I told her as much, but this didn't seem to calm her down. I informed the police of the situation, and they immediately asked me if she had gotten out of a specific taxi. I can't remember the cab company name. I didn't know if she had or not, so they said they were sending some officers over. After I got off the phone, she was a little calmer, but she kept looking frantically around the lobby. I tried to assure her that everything would be fine, but it didn't seem like she heard a word I said. She started to wander off down the hall, so I followed her. She went into our large conference breakfast room, where she backed herself up into a corner, now staring directly at me with increasing terror. I kept telling her everything was all right, and I did not approach her. I just wanted to keep her in my sight, but I had no desire to get close to her. I tried asking her what had happened, but she would not respond. She just kept telling me I had to help her, and that she was afraid they would get her. I told her it was okay, that I had called the police. She looked horrified at that and asked me why I had called the cops on her. I explained I had called the cops for her, not on her, and that the police would be there to help keep her safe, to which she responded, "Don't fucking touch me." I was roughly 50 feet away from her and had not moved at all. It was about then that my fear started to ease up, because I realized there probably wasn't a them after all, and this girl was simply having some sort of mental break, probably drug-related. The cops arrived shortly after, and rather than being relieved, she was scared of them and was reluctant to speak. They sat her in a chair in the lobby and tried to ask her name, but she just drew her knees up to her chest and started hyperventilating. Then she got up and speed-walked down the hall. Cops ended up escorting her out of the building. She wasn't struggling or screaming, but she definitely seemed distraught and confused. When it was all said and done, I reviewed the security footage from outside the hotel, and it looks like she had been in a cab on the road next to the hotel. Then she had bailed out of it when it slowed down for the stoplight, and she had come running immediately to our front door, screaming. At no point was she pursued by anyone or anything. From what the police told me, the cab driver called the cops before I did, since she had skipped out on the fare. I never knew what happened to her after that. I didn't see her on the arrest reports, so I don't think they charged her with anything, and I hope they were able to get her somewhere safe.